meeting in a church, and where there are one or two issues that concern people, and which informs this question, I think. Where do you stand on sanctity of life issues, such as assisted suicide, abortion, and the use of embryos in research? Denzil.
Right, well, embryos in research, I do support that there has to be research in there to help deal with various illnesses and try and find cures for terminally ill patients. I support embryo research. Where I do differ certainly on the abortion issues, I personally am not in favour of abortion. But it's difficult for me to argue because I'm a man and not a woman. It's a woman's right to choose, ultimately. But if it was my choice, my own personal choice, I'm not in favour. The assisted suicide I do not support, but then again I've never been in a position where I've had to make or be faced with decisions like that where someone is suffering. But if I had to make those decisions now and today on those particular issues, that's where I stand.
Thank you. James?
From the sound of things, my position is identical to Denzil's on this. Assisted suicide I would oppose. And the reason I would oppose it is because I believe that there is a real risk that older people would feel pressurized into putting themselves forward for assisted suicide because they might feel it would be somehow more convenient for their families or something. At a meeting recently, during this campaign, an elderly man came up to me and said 80% of elderly people would support an assisted suicide bill. Well, even if they would, I wouldn't. Abortion, I do not like or approve of the idea of abortion. I would not, though, abolish it, because I think that the 1967 Abortion Act had a deep humanity within it, because it was aimed at stopping the backstreet abortions that would have gone on if it hadn't been brought in. But I wouldn't want to reduce the number. I would want to restrict the number of abortions to those that are genuinely certified by two medical doctors. We're now at a position where we have abortion on demand, and I thoroughly disapprove of that. Use of embryos in research, I voted in favour of it, because the moral issues of that question seem to me to be exactly the same as those that arise in the issue of abortion itself. The moral issues are very difficult to distinguish between the two, and I voted, after a lot of agonising actually, in favour of the use of embryos in research.
Thank you. Ruth?
Assisted suicide, I think there is a place for that. I say that because my first husband had multiple sclerosis. He only had it for a very short period of time, 6 years, but he was a football, cricket playing, very active man, and within the space of a year he could do nothing. The next 5 years of his life were a misery. He was permanently in pain. The doctors couldn't find out why he was in pain, and he used to pray to die. So, yes, I've lived through a situation. I don't know if he had asked me. I don't know if I could have taken him to a clinic to do it myself. I don't know that bit. But I can see, having lived through that yes, there are people who think that that is the best option for them. Embryo transfer, well, yes, I think that's quite an important thing. I've a very good friend who has twins because of modern technology, because she couldn't have her own children, and without donor eggs, she wouldn't be a mother, she wouldn't have twins. So, you know, yes, I think there place for that. Abortion, now, I think sometimes, in some situations, then yes, abortion is necessary. I don't think it's something that should be taken without guidance, without help. And there should be strong regulations as to, you know, why you're having an abortion. Why do you want one?
I think I'm in a similar position to James and Denzil. I haven't suffered what Ruth suffered. I remember my father's great fear was that he would end up suffering from Alzheimer's, and that in those circumstances he wouldn't really want to continue. It happens it was killed. He died after a series of strokes, and that really suicide went into it in his case. But in general, I'm very uncomfortable with assisted suicide. And someone rang me up and asked me what my position was, and I think that the legal position pretty well has to stay as it is, where each case is taken on its own merits, whether or not there's a prosecution. The use of embryos, well, if you take it as a given that in vitro fertilisation will happen and that people will have children by artificial means, then a decision has to be made of what happens to the surplus embryos. You can either discard them and make no use of them, or you can make valuable use of them. And I think that research based on surplus embryos that have been created to meet the artificial fertilisation, it seems to be a valuable use of what otherwise would be wasted. Abortion, my position seems pretty identical to the others. The 67 Act met a really serious need, but abortion on demand is certainly something I feel uncomfortable with.